Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here with my next Sword Art Online light novel review. This one's going to be for Sword Art Online Progressive Volume 3. The most currently released Progressive book just came out in English a couple of weeks ago actually, so it's fairly new. And yeah, this one covers floor 4 of Aincrad, which is a kind of waterway themed floor. It's basically a bunch of canyons with lots of various waterways in between it, and the kind of theme tends to focus on the fact that all the players need to get boats to travel around the place. And the other notable thing about this floor, obviously, is that it continues on the Elf War Quest, which is the first big campaign quest in SAO, and that's basically kind of the idea of what this book tends to cover. It's as you can see from the cover, it's Kirito and Austin on their gondola that they get. That's the majority of like the first half of the book, and then the second half is when like obviously they reunite with Kismel, who is in the last book, and then continue on the Elf War Quest, and then you get a little bit of the boss raid. You don't get the like, full battle kind of scene, but you get a decent amount of it. You get the important parts. I think Kawahara is kind of aware that he doesn't need to just show every single battle in the series. Only the ones that are really important. Like he showed the first floor boss battle because it was the first floor boss battle and someone died. He showed the second one to show how different the bosses could be compared to the beta, compared to the actual game, and then kind of skipped over the third floor boss battle because there was nothing really of note. Like, okay, there's poison attacks, they got past them. In this case, it's something similar, but something different happens, which I'll get into, and so they show a little bit of it, but then they kind of just go, oh, we defeated it, no one died. Fair enough. But he does hint at the back of the book that Floor 5 is up next in Progressive Volume 4, and that probably means that it's a bit more of a tricky boss, so we could see a lot more focus on the boss in the next book. But yeah, let's start off as usual with the Kirito-Asuna relationship as it develops in this book. Um, they do some pretty nice stuff with it in this book, actually. I quite enjoyed what they had here. Obviously, the key thing here is that Asuna is actually very happy on this floor because she is a fan of gondolas. She's always kind of wanted to go in a gondola, and so when she hears that one, they get to travel around that way the whole time, and then especially when they do the quest to make their own, she is just in a much better mood than she's kind of been on the other floors. And you really see that over the course of their kind of relationship in this book, that she in the last book developed a kind of close relationship with Kismel, and when she meets up with her again, it's kind of this sisterly relationship between the two, and she really has this good attachment to her. She's developed an attachment to her equipment, the boat now as well, and is beginning to sort of accept kind of where she is in the game. And there's some very important stuff as the book progresses. Obviously, you still have Kirito constantly wondering like how long should they stick together as a duo, because if she sticks around with me too long, she'll be just ostracized by the whole rest of the group, and she'll just be considered a beater like me. What time do I kind of have to let her go off on her own and kind of do her own thing? And it leads into basically how the book ends, that just before they go to kind of collect the reward for the part of the Elf quest line, which is basically where the book ends, Asuna just asks Kirito, how long are you planning on kind of like pairing up with me? And he just says, what is it? Let me get the quote right here. He says, "Until you're strong enough that you don't need me." So that kind of gives you the hint that like he's sticking around with her to help her so that she can kind of be the best she can be going forward. He really, a lot of his actions in the book when it comes to their relationship with the other, the guilds at this point in time, is very much so that he doesn't burn bridges with them that would hinder Asuna going forward. There's a key moment in this book in the middle where it happens in around Christmas time. So on the 24th, they defeat the floor boss, not the actual boss of the entire floor, but like the kind of the boss that's just out in the middle of the world, the kind of mid boss, I suppose. And they defeat that really quickly because they want to get their Christmas party going. And obviously the two guilds end up kind of running this together. Asuna gets an invite, and basically I think the only two people that don't get invites are Argo and Kirito. So even Asuna gets an invite, and so it's this moment for Kirito where for the first time in the game he's really feeling the fact that he's a beater and kind of sees the way the others see him. Because for the most part he has an okay relationship with Kibao and Lin, the leaders of the guilds. In that they've learned to respect him, though they still are frustrated by the fact that he always gets the last attack bonus on the bosses. But he's never really been excluded from anything in the game, and so this is the first time when it's seen as kind of personal for him between people, and that like, oh, have I really done something that bad to like I wouldn't even be invited? Like, it's a big moment, and especially when he hears that Austin is invited. He kind of sees this as a kind of rift between the two, but she wasn't planning on going anyway because she's very anti-guilds at this point in time. She has no interest in joining one. Whereas the whole time Kirito is kind of wondering like, if I teach her enough, she will in many ways become a leader herself. Like that, if she started a guild on her own, she could very much so make that guild the most powerful one beyond even the two that are established now, the Aincrad Liberation Squad and the Dragon Knights. So he's kind of thinking of that already, that like he kind of wants in many ways to prepare her for that, but at the same time he does like their partnership that's happening here. The other notable thing, just with regards to kind of Kirito being protective of Asuna, is that obviously in the last book they established that her new sword, which she got upgraded at the elf camp, is the chivalric rapier +5, which is basically like it's a sword that is good for like the next like 4 or 5 floors. It's really powerful, and it was notable how powerful it was during the boss battle on the last floor. So everyone knows Asuna has one of the most powerful weapons in the game. And then Asuna ends up revealing to Kirito that she also got this other really rare item that allows her to effectively have a 5th skill slot in the game. At the current point in the game, they're only allowed to have 4 skill slots. And so she has this bottle, which she got from the Forest Elf drop, which allows her to basically save her progress on one of her skills, put it in this bottle, and then start a new skill. And so she can basically have 5 skills on the go, though only 4 equipped. And Kirito is like amazed by this because she's gotten so lucky with some of her item drops recently, and he's kind of a bit afraid for her because like if she just like told everyone that she has these 2 items, she would basically be ostracized in the same way that Kirito is, because she is kind of better than Kirito in terms of her items, and the only thing holding her back from being the best player in the game is the fact that she's not as experienced as Kirito in playing the game. So you can see why he's kind of so eager to stick around with her, to give her the advice that she needs, to where she won't be, I suppose, taken advantage of if she just joined up with one of the guilds. And the fact that she was invited by both guilds to the Christmas party kind of shows that they are all angling to get her on their team and not Kirito. So it's definitely setting up this interesting dynamic of like, when exactly does it happen that Asuna joins the Knights of the Blood Oath? When does that guild actually form? And what causes her to get past her problems with the other guilds and stuff like that? She seems to have a level of respect for Heathcliff, so I'm kind of waiting actually for the point where like Kaiba makes his debut in the story properly, and kind of Heathcliff is kind of seen for the first time really, and because there's no mention of him so far, like Heathcliff on the front line, so it's this kind of mysterious guy who just appears and is suddenly like powerful enough to command a guild on his own. And then the fact that Austin is second in command, like, did she join later on, or did Heathcliff like specifically choose her to kind of form the guild with him, and it's that important. But I'm really eager to see where they go with that and when exactly that comes into being. But that's the key points in I suppose their relationship. There's also some nice kind of you get your typical funny moments if they get into awkward situations. There's one moment where they're investigating these boxes that the fallen elves, which are kind of seem to be allied with the forest elves, are kind of shipping around the place. And to hide from them, they have to like get into one, and it's really tight, and like there's just this awkward moment between the two that they show here. you also have another kind of scene in the bath, which is shown in one of these color pages with Kismel, where initially Kismel, being like part of the world, is about to walk in naked, but Asuna like drags Kirito's head under the water, quickly goes over to Kismel and gives her like a swimsuit basically. So you can see that, and then there are other moments where like Asuna kind of has her guard up. She tends to have her guard up about sort of things. There's been these awkward situations, in the previous books, but she seems to in this book very much accept the closeness of her relationship with Kirito, in that there are a few moments like when they're getting their boat built, they have to stay there the whole time while it's being built, so as someone else doesn't walk in and like kind of stop them from getting the boat, and they have to sleep because they've been like doing this quest for hours. And there's no like beds around the place. There's just basically a giant rocking chair. And Kirito's just kind of like, oh, okay, you sleep there. I'll just sleep on the floor. It's fine. And then Asuna kind of is just kind of like, she understands like why he's doing this. He's kind of respecting her boundaries, but she's just like, you need to sleep too. I'll let you sleep kind of next to me on the rocking chair, because it's the big rocking chair. And Kirito doesn't do it because Asuna falls asleep immediately and kind of ends up kind of taking up the whole chair. But it's this moment where she was kind of open to it. And then especially like later on, coming up to Christmas, basically they haven't planned anything because they've been so lost in doing the quest and trying to like complete the floor that they've almost forgot it's Christmas. Kirito doesn't seem to care so much about Christmas. He must not celebrate it. They don't really go into it too much, but Asuna reveals that she's kind of been thinking about Christmas a little bit, and then Kirito's just kind of like, okay, I sort of have a Christmas present for you, and this is the point at which he brings her to see Kismel, because obviously he knows roughly the way this floor works. He brings her to the Dark Elf camp and reunites with Kismel and stuff like that, and she's very happy about that. And then she returns the favor later on by, in the bath, obviously, she gives him the new swim trunks so that they can go in without having to be like naked or wear full clothing. So that was quite fun. They just kind of have this kind of exchange of gifts, and they're very appreciative of what happens. And then later on, Asuna mentions that like maybe next Christmas we can organize something better, have a party or something like that, have cake together. And this is a big moment for both of them, because one, it's Asuna kind of accepting that the game is going to take a long time to finish, and she's kind of thinking more about the future, that they're going to be in here long term. And then just the idea that potentially their partnership could last up until next Christmas. It doesn't, obviously, because this is kind of, I think, a nice reference, kind of continuity point that Kawahara's put in here, in that we all know where Kirito is the following Christmas. He's tackling that Renegade, Nicholas the Renegade quest to get the resurrection item to what he believes at that point in time revive Sachi from the Moonlit Black Cats incident. So like Kirito has like a pretty awful Christmas the following year, and Asuna isn't around in that episode of the anime. So there's some important stuff that happens in the next kind of couple of months, and I'm eager to see. Obviously, when is the point where they split up? The final thing I'll talk about with Kirito and Asuna is that kind of just before the kind of final sequence, basically, before they just go into the final part of the quest, actually, obviously Kirito and Asuna are staying in the Dark Elf castle. What's it called again? Let me just look this up. Yaffle Castle, which is on the floor, and here they have a room basically, and just before they're ready to go to bed, Asuna kind of just goes that to make it so that we get to the next year, you have to become stronger. She basically tells him this, that she's a bit worried that she won't make it to next Christmas. Like, she reverts a little bit back to kind of the way she was before, that she's not confident that she'll actually make it there, that she just wants to still be herself and stuff like that. And Kirito doesn't really know what to say to her here. He can't say that, I'll protect you and stuff like that. But Asuna kind of cuts him off and says, you need to get stronger. You need to get to a situation where you can protect and can say to someone with confidence that you can protect them. And I think this is a nice setup as well for the whole Moonlit Black Cats incident, which is the kind of seemingly first incident in the game where he can save someone, and then from there becomes obsessed with leveling up to kind of make amends for that, which is why he's able to save like Silica and Lisbeth and Asuna in future episodes of the anime. So that there's some really nice stuff between the two of them, and this isn't even getting into like the plot. As I said, the big beta test change is that the floor, as far as Kirito is aware, was just a canyon. That you just huge, high kind of canyon walls on the sides, and you just be very confined walking along certain paths. He said it was a very boring floor, but when they immediately arrive up there, it's the same canyons, but they're all filled in with water now, so they have to take waterways and all over the place. And very quickly they start the quest to build their own boat, which after getting some information from Argo, Kirito realizes this is the one quest that wasn't in the beta test, and they do this and they make their boat. They customize it. They do the quest in the way to get all the really fancy materials, so they end up defeating a kind of boss monster who they get the really powerful materials from, and so they make a really good boat. And they kind of hint again at kind of AI NPCs with the boat builder, in that he seems really happy about the fact that he's making a really strong boat for the first time in a while. And so they make their boat, they customize it. Kirito lets Asuna do most of the customization work. They put a weapon on it because that was one of the drops from the boss, and they call it the Tilnell, which is the name of Kismel's sister. So you can see how close they are to Kismel here, that the fact that they named their ship after her. And then later on in the book, when Kismel finds out about the boat, she's really happy that the two of them thought about her enough to actually name the ship after her sister. And she kind of reveals a little bit of information about her sister, and that she really liked swimming and liked boats and stuff like that. So some nice connections going on here. But yeah, then they just kind of start the quest, and it sets up this kind of story on this floor that you can hire gondolas by NPC boatmen basically to travel around the floor, but they won't bring you out of the town. So if you're in the town of Rovia, they won't actually bring you outside of the town, because the water guilds, the builders guilds and stuff like that won't allow it to happen. So this is why you kind of need to make your own ship to properly travel around the rest of the floor. And this is part of the quest, because it's ultimately kind of revealed that it's this conspiracy going on with the guilds and the kind of higher ups and the waterway guilds, that they're stopping this from happening, and there's some sort of a deal going on between the humans in this floor and the fallen elves, who were mentioned briefly in the last book. And they're basically shipping loads of boxes to the fallen elves, and these boxes don't have anything in them, which is part of the investigation that Kirito and Asuna go on. And they quickly figure it out that these boxes are just meant to look like there's something in them and that they're transporting something, so no one will be suspicious. But they're actually just empty boxes that are made really thick, so that you can take the boxes apart, and they're basically building materials for boats. And it's all leading up to a forest elf attack on Yaffle Castle. Obviously using the fact that they're building boats on the floor very close to Yaffle Castle, with help from the humans and stuff like that. Everything's going against the Dark Elves. And this leads to basically the plot where Kirito and Asuna go to Yaffle Castle, inform Kismel of what's going on, and she introduces them to the commander on this floor, which is Viscount... what's his name? It's kind of hard to pronounce, in that they don't never specifically say how to pronounce his name. Let me get this here. Yeah, his name is Viscount Yoffili. Yophilis. Yofilis. I'm not really sure how to pronounce it. I'm just going to say Yophilis for the sake of it, for ease of speaking. And he reveals all this. They reveal all the stuff about him, that he's the commander, but he's ill. He can't go outside. He's sick and stuff like that. And there's kind of low morale around this base because of all the rules and stuff like that. The attack eventually comes, and they're losing pretty badly. Kirito and Austin are involved, and this is kind of in place of the huge focus on the boss battle. They have this kind of NPC boat battle between, I think it's 6 Dark Elf ships allied with Kirito and Asuna and Kismel in the Tilnell. So it's basically 7 on 12 ships, and you have this pretty big battle going on where they're like ships ramming into each other, destroying each other, battles jumping between boats. It's a really cool actually action scene going on here, and they're losing pretty badly. And then Kirito realizes that he has to turn the tides by basically getting Viscount Joffrey's into the battle. So he goes up to the castle, and then the Viscount asks him the question basically, why did you ally with us rather than the forest elves? And he reveals basically honestly that it's because he and Asuna really like, he has love Kismel and would do anything to help her in her homeland. And then they cut to this extra paragraph where they kind of reveal that later on, much later on in the game, I found out that it was a system where it actually monitored your actual feelings. So if he had lied about loving Kismel, the Count wouldn't have participated in the battle. But the fact that he told the truth meant that the Count actually agreed to it and came out and helped. And it was revealed that it was actually a lie and that he was not feeling very confident. And he had like been injured in the last battle and wasn't confident. And he comes out, turns the battle in their favor, gives everyone like buffs and stuff like that. They turn it around. Kirito has a really big fight with the Forest Elf commander and ends up defeating him, but at the expense of his anneal blade being shattered in the process. And they win. And then basically, as soon as this fight ends, Asuna kind of gets a message, I think from Argo, that the boss fight started 50 minutes ago. They went on without us. And Kismel and Joffrey's whatever his name is, agree to go with them to the battle, that they'll help Kirito and Asuna in the raid battle. So they arrive, he reveals information that basically this boss, its kind of gimmick, is that it's a kind of hippopotamus type creature, and that it will flood the chamber that the boss battle takes in, so you need flotation devices, which are established earlier on in the book. And so they arrive, and then as they arrive and open the door, Aegil comes like flying out with this stream of water, and they're like, yeah, we kind of got flooded, no one's died yet, but we're kind of struggling here. And then they figure out basically how to do it. Jon Fleece comes in, he gives everyone a buff, Kismel fights as well, and they just have Argo stand outside the door and constantly open and close it to get the water out when the boss like fills the room up, and they defeated relatively easy after that. Kirito once again gets the last attack bonus, and it's kind of all sorted. Lind and Kibao aren't heavily involved in this like they were in the last book. There's not really much development on that part. They seem fairly friendly, but they're still combative about things. So there's that. The only other thing to talk about is kind of they kind of leave this on a little bit of a cliffhanger in that just before they go off to the boss battle, the Viscount basically says, for helping us so much, you and Asuna both can pick 2 really rare items from my kind of chest of items, basically. But before they can choose them, they have to go off and do the boss battle. So they even end this kind of hinting that like, oh yeah, I'm going to go back to the castle and pick my items now. So it's kind of this really nice cliffhanger that like the start of the next book is going to be basically Kirito and Asuna picking their really rare items. Kirito basically says he's going to choose a sword to replace his broken anneal blade. And then it's going to be interesting to see what they choose from there. But that's basically the book. There's other little aspects here and there that I kind of missed out on. But that's it for the most part. I really enjoyed this book. I thought the Kirito Asuna stuff was really nicely done. A nice kind of balance of like fun moments between them, but also hinting that their partnership won't last forever, and little hints as to where like their character development properly comes from, that Asuna is getting attached to things in the world and maybe something will happen that causes her to change, because right now she's at the point where she's kind of accepting they'll be there for a year, whereas the Asuna that we meet kind of later on in the anime, after she's part of the Knights of the Blood Oath, is very set on finishing the game as soon as possible and not really enjoying the world, so something happens. And then Kirito obviously wanting to become stronger, that's set up here as well. But yeah, so some nice stuff with them. I like the continued plot of the Elf War quest. I'm eager to see if they focus on that in the next book or not, or if they kind of skip it and then go ahead with it going forward. And there's a few more hints about Floor 9 being like the key point. That's where the quest is going to end and stuff like that. So I like that. Kismel continues to be developed as a character, and that they Kirito for the first time I think actually mentions in the book like she is really beginning to feel like an AI here. It's clear that she's not being controlled by a player, but like has Kaiba put AIs in the game, and it's interesting there. And there's further like there's a lot of mystery going on with the Elf War plot, and that um, some things the Forest Elves say that are kind of like hints that the Dark Elves are also allied with the Fallen Elves and stuff like that. So they're hinting that maybe setting up that there could be some big betrayal from the Dark Elves going forward or something like that, and that may cause Asuna to not trust anyone anymore and kind of not really care about things anymore. So there's hints here and there. Like after reading book 2, I was kind of thinking they may go down the road of like having Kismel die and that being the big effect on them. But now I'm kind of thinking, will there be some issue created? Like, what if Kismel turns on them and they kind of have to face her as an enemy? Like, Asuna is so close to Kismel right now where she really wouldn't want to do that, and Kirito obviously wants to protect her, so there could be like some heated thing that happens there. But I don't know how heavily they're hinting towards the Dark Elf kind of betrayal thing. I it's just little kind of bits of dialogue here and there that sort of hint at something more happening. But I do like the overall plot that's going on. That there's these, it's basically Dark Elves versus Forest Elves, but there's also these Fallen Elves, which are this kind of in between faction that aren't really as powerful but are really tricky and stuff like that. So I like what's going on. And then like obviously the cliffhanger ending of the cool items coming into the next book is going to be cool. But in terms of Progressive Volume 4, it's coming out in Japan in a couple of weeks, mid-December I think it is. No idea when it's going to be released in English. I assume people will translate it as it comes out. That could take a while though. Given that they still have to translate the remainder of the main series of novels, like I think Volume 6 is going to be the next one coming out in December in English. And there's still like 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 to go, as well as Progressive and potentially some other stuff. So there's a lot of translation work that still needs to be done in regards to the English stuff. So I don't know how high of a priority Progressive 4 is going to be. I think I'd like to think that they put it high enough up on the priority order that it would be out late next year or something like that, to keep it that at least one Progressive book comes out every year. But I'm not really sure. I'd prefer them to kind of put it really high in the list and translate it as soon as possible, just because it's like really interesting, and then the main story can kind of come out as you need it to, because the anime's covered it, whereas this is completely new stuff that isn't covered in the anime for the most part. So there's that. The only thing we really know right now is that the next floor is is meant to be a kind of treasure hunt themed thing, that they go to these ancient ruins and there's a lot of items to collect. Argo seems to be heavily involved. She's on the cover, so she probably teams up with Kirito and Asuna for the floor. And then there was a hint in one of the other books about some of the enemies being the first enemies to kind of knock you down and kind of steal your items. So that could be a cool thing depending on what they do. So I'm excited to see the next floor for sure, given that there's a hint that kind of every multiple of 5 is going to be a really potentially strong boss as well. So there could be a lot more focus on the boss battle more than the last 2 books. But yeah, that's been the book. I definitely recommend this book. It's probably been my Progressive Volume 1 is obviously really good, but in terms of like 2 versus 3, I definitely say that this has been the best like individual floor so far. Like I think this covering floor 4 was better than Volume 2, which covered floor 3, and then the second half of Progressive 1, which covered floor 2. I really enjoyed this one. So that's been the review. Definitely pick up this book if you can. But other than that, thanks for watching, and bye.